Hey, this is Brian, the main contributor to the Smart Connections Obsidian plugin, and I'm about to go through the different GitHub issues that I have been unable to respond to. It takes a lot of time to read through the issues and formulate a good response, so I'm hoping that by recording my process, you can see what I'm thinking as I'm coming up with the response, and hopefully that will provide you with more insights on what the future of smart connections look like, and also answer whatever questions it is that you had in the issue itself. Thanks for watching, and let's get started. Okay, this is an interesting one. The reason is because this is a feature request about including external platforms. You know, Sarah's there with some good suggestions for additional platforms that would be useful. Same thing with vGillette. Fedora Base also has some interesting suggestions. Yeah. So, quite a few requests here for the external integrations, and I want to say that this is actually something, while I haven't, made any updates here on this thread in a while, it is something that I've been continuing to think about. There's a few different challenges in making external platforms available within the smart environment so that, smart connections can find relevant content from whether it's your Gmail or your social media or whatever other content can be imported from these other platforms. So, to talk about some of those challenges real quick, number one is the actual integration. In case you're unfamiliar with building these sort of integrations, a lot of times there's a necessary server-side component. And the reason I say necessary is because that's what it takes to be able to when you're importing, say, your messages from Gmail, being able to do that little login where it's, you log in with your Gmail account. It says, allow this app to read my messages or whatever other permissions you're giving the app. In order to implement that, that often requires a server component. So, I've been thinking about, as part of the Smart Connect official service, enabling those integrations. And there's another challenge, which is, where do we keep that data? Like in the examples I showed in this issue, I was actually importing data. Actually, that's incorrect. So, not in these examples, but what I did do, I'll give you a quick look at my Obsidian. I have where I created a synchronization script, so, which actually we should be able to quickly find it. 27. So you can see this issue was imported into my Obsidian vault. And this way, you can see other issues on the side here are popping up. That's one way to go about it, but that may not be desirable, to have all of this content pulled into your Obsidian. So that brings me to another challenge, is what a collection of content would look like if it was, handled via an API or an external system from what's happening here in Obsidian with this. So back to in the short term, the Smart Connect app, which enables you to control actions available to the AI for integrating within your smart environment. So, just for a quick background on that, let's say you want to give the AI the ability to create note files or edit note files, from both like a privacy and security standpoint. You want to make sure that the AI is only allowed in a certain, like, pre-approved section of your computer, but, like have the ability to interact with your computer is still very valuable. So whether you're using the GPTs, or, coming soon, the smart chat itself within Obsidian will also have access to these same actions. That's a paid, Claude's web interface and Google Gemini's web interface will also allow similar things to GPTs, which would allow access to these actions, but basically a custom action for integrating with these external platforms. So really, for each external platform, there would be a custom action. Right now, I'm testing that, but it requires retrieving API keys. And while you're probably familiar with getting API keys to use the different AI models, like, you're getting your OpenAI API key or your Anthropic API key. The issue with the integrations is the API key process, especially for any service related to Google, is a much more complicated process. Fortunately, Google managed to make their Gemini API key pretty easily accessible via their AI Studio, website. However, if you wanted to get an API key that enabled you to interact with your Gmail account, frankly, I'm not even sure it's something that's accessible to the general public for Gmail. So like my Gmail account, I pay for through Google Workspaces, and Google Workspaces is also what manages my API keys to interact with the different Google products. So basically, it would be rather complicated to set up a custom action to retrieve your Gmail content. So that's one reason why I think that, having a server-side integration available for people using the Smart Connect official service, that is probably going to be the first significant progress here as far as getting access to additional external platforms via your smart environment. But I also do intend on releasing these custom actions. I've been building these custom actions for testing on my own, basically in the Smart Connect app. What that looks like is, you write a single JavaScript file, or also a test file if you're, trying to make sure that everything works correctly. But it's only the single JavaScript file is all that Smart Connect really needs to run the custom action. So I just add that file to my Smart Connect instance, and it makes that action available. So what's next? As I refine these actions, I'm going to be publishing them publicly as what I'm calling community actions. I'm very much inspired by the community plugins that exist for Obsidian. I want to create a similar ecosystem for Smart Connect, basically making it really easy for developers to contribute new actions, whether those are integrations or, other ways to interact within your smart environment from the AI. So that's a status update on the external platforms integration. It is something I'm thinking a lot about recently, so hopefully I'll have more for you soon. Okay, on to the next one.